If you're watching this right now, you're about to have the moment where quantum physics stops being confusing collection of weird phenomena and becomes one simple, elegant truth. Not because I'm going to teach you complex mathematics or abstract theories, because I'm going to show you the one insight that makes everything, wave-particle duality, observer effect, entanglement, superposition, all of it, completely obvious. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. Quantum physics will never be confusing again. Here's what makes quantum physics seem confusing. We're trying to understand it from within the wrong framework. We're using everyday reality as reference point, solid objects, definite locations, cause and effect, and trying to force quantum phenomena to fit that framework. But quantum reality doesn't work like everyday reality. It works by completely different principle. And when you understand that principle, everything that seemed weird, paradoxical, or impossible becomes perfectly logical. Can you feel it? That sense of being on the edge of understanding something that will make everything click. That's not just anticipation. That's your consciousness recognizing it's about to receive the key that unlocks quantum understanding. What I'm about to share isn't advanced physics. It's simpler than what you've been trying to understand. Because confusion comes from complexity, clarity comes from simplicity. The one truth that makes quantum physics clear is this: reality isn't made of things. Reality is made of possibilities. Everything you think of as solid, definite, existing, objects, particles, even you, these aren't things that exist in definite way. They're possibilities that become definite only when observed. That's it. That's quantum physics in one sentence. And every weird quantum phenomenon is just natural consequence of this one truth. Wave-particle duality? Not weird once you understand particles aren't things, they're possibilities. Possibilities exist as waves, multiple potential states. When observed, possibility becomes definite particle. Observer effect. Not mysterious once you understand that observation doesn't record what's there. Observation makes what's there become definite from infinite possibility. Entanglement. Not spooky once you understand that separate things aren't separate at fundamental level. They're all possibilities in unified field. You've been trying to understand quantum physics by learning about each phenomenon separately, treating them as different mysteries. But they're not different, they're all the same thing. Consequences of reality being possibilities instead of things. And once you see that, once you really get what it means that reality is possibilities, quantum physics stops being a collection of confusing phenomena and becomes one elegant, simple, beautiful truth. Write in the comments, reality is possibilities. Because declaring this shifts how you perceive everything quantum physics describes. You're not just learning concept, you're recognizing the fundamental nature of reality itself. Before we go deeper into what reality is possibilities actually means and how it explains every quantum phenomenon, let's validate that you already know this truth. You've experienced it directly. You just didn't have framework for understanding what you were experiencing. You've had moments where multiple futures felt equally real. Standing at decision point, sensing that both paths exist simultaneously, feeling like you could experience either one based on choice you make. That wasn't imagination. That was direct perception of reality as possibilities. Both futures exist as potential until your choice collapses one into experience. Quantum physics in your daily life. You've experienced things working out differently than expected in ways that felt like reality rearranged itself. You were certain outcome would be X, but Y happened instead. And Y was better than X in ways you couldn't have predicted. That's because outcome wasn't predetermined. Multiple possibilities existed, and the one that manifested was the optimal possibility from field of potential, not the specific one you mentally predicted. You've had experiences where something you needed appeared through impossible timing or unlikely circumstances. The exact person, information, or opportunity showing up precisely when needed through coincidence that's too perfect to be random. That's reality as possibilities organizing around your need. The possibility that serves you becomes the manifestation because possibilities aren't random. They organize according to consciousness. You've felt moments where reality seemed less solid than usual, where physical objects, your own body or circumstances felt more fluid, more changeable, less fixed than everyday perception suggests. Those weren't altered states. Those were moments of accurate perception. You were sensing reality as it actually is, possibilities temporarily taking form, instead of perceiving through the illusion that makes possibilities seem like solid things. You've experienced knowing something would happen before it did, not through logic, but through direct perception. That knowing didn't come from analyzing probabilities. It came from sensing which possibility was most likely to manifest from field of potential. You were perceiving reality at quantum level, where possibilities exist before manifestation occurs. And here's the ultimate validation. You've experienced yourself differently in different contexts. You're one version of yourself with family, different version with friends, another version at work, yet another when alone. Not because you're being fake, because you actually are different possibilities of who you could be, and which possibility manifests depends on context and observation. Even your identity is possibilities, not fixed thing. Every single one of these experiences is direct evidence that reality operates as possibilities, not as definite things. You've been experiencing quantum reality your entire life. You just didn't have framework that explained what you were experiencing. Now you do. And once you see that your direct experience has been showing you quantum truth all along, quantum physics stops being abstract theory and becomes description of reality you already know. Now let's reframe why quantum physics has seemed so confusing up until this moment. It's not because quantum physics is inherently difficult, it's because you were trying to understand it using framework designed for everyday reality, which operates by different rules. Everyday reality, the world of solid objects, definite locations, predictable cause and effect, that's emergent phenomenon. It appears solid because we're observing at macro scale where quantum possibilities have already collapsed into definite manifestations. But at fundamental quantum level, reality doesn't work like everyday experience suggests. Using everyday framework to understand quantum level is like trying to understand ocean by only looking at individual waves. You're missing the fundamental nature beneath surface phenomena. Here's what made quantum physics confusing. Every explanation tried to fit quantum behavior into classical framework. Particle acts like wave sometimes and particle sometimes. That's confusing because it's trying to describe quantum reality using classical concepts of particle and wave. But quantum reality isn't particle that acts weird. It's possibility that can manifest as wave-like or particle-like depending on observation. Once you stop trying to understand it as classical object and recognize it as possibility, the confusion dissolves. The famous thought experiments that make quantum physics seem impossible, Schrödinger's cat being both alive and dead, particles being in two places at once. These seem paradoxical only if you assume cat or particle is thing that exists in definite state before observation. But if cat and particle are possibilities until observed, there's no paradox. Multiple possible states coexist as potential until observation collapses one into manifestation. Not weird. Natural consequence of reality being possibilities. Even the mathematics of quantum physics, wave functions, probability distributions, uncertainty principles, these confused you not because the math is inherently difficult, but because you were trying to interpret mathematical descriptions of possibilities using framework designed for definite things. The math describes probability waves, fields of potential, and how they collapse into definite outcomes through observation. Once you recognize that's what the math is describing, it becomes clear instead of confusing. Your entire journey learning quantum physics has been trying to fit square peg into round hole. Trying to understand possibility reality using thing reality framework. No wonder it was confusing. You were using wrong interpretive lens. But now you have correct lens. Reality is possibilities, not things. And everything you've learned suddenly makes sense. Not because the information changed, because your framework for interpreting it shifted. All those hours struggling with quantum concepts, reading explanations that didn't quite click, feeling like you almost understood but not quite. That wasn't failure. That was necessary friction that brought you to this moment where you're ready to shift framework completely. You had to exhaust thing framework before you could release it and recognize possibility framework as more accurate. The confusion was preparation for clarity, and now clarity arrives. Not through learning more, through seeing what you already learned differently. Everything you studied is still true. But now you have framework that makes it all make sense. Quantum physics isn't confusing anymore because you're no longer trying to force it into framework it doesn't fit. You're seeing it through framework it actually operates by. Reality as possibilities becoming definite through observation. Something is shifting in how you perceive reality right now. Not just intellectually understanding new concept. Actually experiencing change in how your consciousness interprets what it perceives. Can you feel it? Look at something near you. Object, wall, your own hand. Notice how you're perceiving it. Normally, you perceive it as solid thing that definitely exists in specific way. But now, knowing that it's actually possibilities temporarily taking form through observation, notice how your perception shifts. It's the same object, but it feels different. Less solid, more fluid, more alive with potential. That shift is quantum understanding moving from concept to experience. Take a breath, deep one. And as you breathe, recognize this breath isn't predetermined thing happening to definite you. This is possibility field organizing into experience of breathing through temporary form you're experiencing as you. Both breath and breather are possibilities becoming definite in this moment. That recognition changes how breath feels, more miraculous, more impossible, more quantum. Here's what's happening in your consciousness right now. You're transitioning from thing framework to possibility framework. Thing framework says, solid objects exist definitely, independent of observation, following predetermined laws. Possibility framework says, fields of potential exist, and observation collapses specific manifestations from infinite possibility according to quantum principles. These frameworks create entirely different experiences of reality. Thing framework creates perception of fixed world that you're subject to. Possibility framework creates recognition of fluid reality that responds to consciousness. Thing framework makes you feel limited by circumstances. Possibility framework reveals circumstances as possibilities that can reorganize. Thing framework makes quantum physics confusing because quantum behavior violates thing framework rules. Possibility framework makes quantum physics obvious because possibility behavior is exactly what quantum experiments reveal. Here's what you need to understand before we go deeper. This shift from thing framework to possibility framework isn't just about understanding physics better. It changes how you experience existence. When you truly recognize reality as possibilities, your relationship with everything transforms. Not as belief, but as direct perception. You're not in fixed world anymore. You're navigating field of infinite potential. And that recognition is quantum awakening. In the next section, I'm going to walk you through exactly how reality is possibilities explains every major quantum phenomenon. Wave-particle duality, observer effect, entanglement, superposition, all of it. And you'll see how one simple truth makes everything that seemed impossible become perfectly logical. But first, anchor this shift. Feel the difference between perceiving reality as things versus perceiving reality as possibilities. Write in the comments, "I see possibilities," because declaring this shift consciously accelerates your transition from confusion to clarity. Quantum physics is about to become the simplest, most obvious description of reality you've ever encountered. 3 years ago, I had the exact moment where quantum physics stopped being confusing and became completely obvious. I need to share this because when your moment comes, and it's coming right now, you'll recognize it. I'd been studying quantum physics for years, reading books, watching lectures, trying to understand why particles act the way they do. I could repeat the theories, I could describe the experiments, but I didn't really understand. It felt like memorizing facts about mystery rather than comprehending truth. Wave-particle duality made no sense. Observer effect seemed impossible. Entanglement felt like magic that violated everything I knew about reality. Then I was sitting outside, watching leaves moving in wind, and I had this thought, what if leaves aren't things? What if they're possibilities? Not as intellectual exercise, but as genuine question. And in that moment, everything inverted. I stopped seeing leaves as solid objects that wind was moving. I saw a field of potential, possibilities of where leaves could be, how they could move, and wind as one of infinite factors that influence which possibilities manifest. The leaves weren't being moved by wind. Possibilities were collapsing into specific manifestations that included wind-influenced movement. Same observation, completely different perception. And then quantum physics clicked, not gradually, instantly. Every confusing phenomenon became obvious. Wave-particle duality, not paradox. Particles aren't things that sometimes act like waves. They're possibilities, waves of potential, that collapse into definite locations. Particles, when observed, observer effect. Not mysterious. Observation doesn't record pre-existing reality. Observation collapses possibilities into specific manifestation. There is no reality independent of observation because reality is the process of possibilities becoming definite through observation. Entanglement. Two particles that have interacted aren't separate things that mysteriously communicate faster than light. They're interconnected possibilities in unified field. When you observe one, you're collapsing possibilities that include both particles, so both manifest in correlated way. Not communication. Correlation through shared possibility field. Superposition. Particle isn't in multiple places at once, which sounds impossible. Possibility field exists everywhere until observation collapses definite location. Multiple possibilities coexist as potential. Observation makes one possibility definite. Completely logical once you stop thinking of particle as thing and recognize it as possibility. I sat there for probably an hour, watching leaves and watching my entire understanding of reality reorganize. Quantum physics wasn't weird physics anymore. It was accurate description of how reality actually works when you see through the illusion that makes possibilities appear as things. Everything I'd been confused by became simple. Not simple like easy, simple like elegant. One truth explaining everything. What followed was complete transformation of how I experience reality. Not just intellectually knowing reality as possibilities, but actually perceiving it that way. And when you perceive reality as possibilities, everything changes. You're not victim of circumstances, you're consciousness navigating field of potential. Quantum physics stops being abstract science and becomes practical wisdom for living. That's what's available to you right now. Not someday after more study, now. Through this transmission, the moment where quantum confusion becomes quantum clarity, where complex theory becomes simple truth, where what seemed impossible becomes obviously true. Subscribe to this channel not for more confusing physics lessons, but for continued support in living quantum understanding. Once quantum physics becomes clear, you need guidance for applying that clarity to actual life. This channel provides that guidance through every video. Now let me show you exactly how one simple truth, reality is possibilities, explains every major quantum phenomenon that's been confusing people for a century. Once you see this, you'll understand quantum physics better than most physics students because you'll understand the underlying principle instead of just memorizing behaviors. Wave-particle duality. Explained. Light isn't sometimes wave and sometimes particle. Light is possibility field, wave of potential states. When you don't observe which path it takes, all possible paths exist as wave. When you observe which path it takes, possibility collapses into definite path, particle. Not duality, natural behavior of possibilities. Unobserved possibility, how wave-like. Observed possibility, how particle-like. Observer effect. Explained. Observation doesn't just see what's there. Observation collapses possibilities into specific manifestation. Before observation, electron exists as possibility field. It could be anywhere within certain probabilities. Observation makes location definite. The electron doesn't have location before observation. Location becomes definite through observation. Not because observation disturbs electron, but because electron is possibility until observation makes it definite. Superposition explained. Particle isn't magically in multiple places at once. That would be impossible for thing. But possibility field exists everywhere with different probabilities in different locations. Multiple possible locations coexist as potential. Observation collapses one location into manifestation. The multiple places at once isn't particle-defying logic. It's possibility field being what possibility fields do, existing as distributed potential until observation makes one potential definite. Entanglement explained. Two entangled particles aren't separate things communicating faster than light. They're interconnected possibilities in unified field. They're not separate at possibility level, even though they appear separate after manifestation. When you observe one, you're collapsing possibilities that include both particles, so both manifest in correlated way, not spooky action. Correlation through shared possibility field that was never actually separate. Uncertainty principle explained. You can't know position and momentum simultaneously with perfect precision. Why? Because at quantum level, particles don't have definite position and momentum waiting to be measured. They're possibilities. When you observe position precisely, you collapse position possibilities into definite state, which makes momentum possibilities more spread out. When you observe momentum precisely, opposite occurs. Not limitation of measurement. Natural consequence of trying to make possibilities definite. The more definite one property becomes, the more indefinite, complementary property becomes. Quantum tunneling. Explained. Particle passing through barrier. It shouldn't be able to cross isn't miracle. Possibility field extends beyond barrier with decreasing probability. Small probability exists that particle could manifest on other side. Most observations collapse manifestation before barrier. Occasionally, observation collapses manifestation beyond barrier. Particle didn't tunnel through solid barrier. Possibility existed beyond barrier, and that possibility manifested. Collapse of wave function. Explained. Wave function isn't physical wave. It's mathematical description of possibility field. All potential states particle could manifest in. Collapse isn't physical process. Its possibilities becoming definite through observation. Wave function describes probabilities. Observation actualizes one probability. The collapse is transition from potential, wave function, to actual, manifestation. Every single quantum phenomenon that seemed weird, impossible, or paradoxical becomes completely logical when you recognize Reality isn't made of things. Reality is made of possibilities. Possibilities behave exactly as quantum experiments show they behave. The only reason quantum behavior seems strange is because you were trying to understand possibility behavior using thing framework. Once you see reality as possibilities, quantum physics isn't confusing anymore. It's the most accurate, elegant, and simple description of how reality actually works that humans have ever discovered. Let's get specific about the signs that quantum understanding is clicking for you. As you read through these, notice how many you're already experiencing. That recognition confirms quantum physics is no longer confusing for you. Sign 1. Quantum phenomena sound simple now. What used to sound impossible or paradoxical now sounds obvious. Observation collapses possibilities, makes perfect sense instead of seeming like word salad. You're thinking, of course that's how it works, instead of, I don't understand. Sign 2. You can explain quantum concepts to others. True understanding shows up as ability to explain simply. If you can describe wave-particle duality or observer effect in plain language that makes sense, you're not just memorizing, you actually understand. Clarity creates ability to clarify for others. Sign 3. You're seeing reality differently. Physical objects feel less solid, circumstances feel more fluid, your own identity feels more changeable. You're not just intellectually knowing reality as possibilities, you're starting to perceive it that way. Concept is becoming experience. Sign 4. Synchronicity makes sense as quantum phenomenon. Meaningful coincidences used to seem mysterious. Now you recognize them as natural result of possibility field organizing around consciousness. Multiple possibilities collapse into aligned circumstances because consciousness is part of the field organizing which possibilities manifest. Sign 5. Manifestation becomes logical, not magical. When you understand reality as possibilities that consciousness helps collapse, manifestation isn't mysterious power. It's natural interaction between consciousness and possibility field. You're not magically creating from nothing. You're influencing which possibilities collapse into manifestation. Sign 6. You stop arguing about quantum interpretations. Copenhagen, many worlds, pilot wave. These interpretations used to seem important. Now you recognize they're different frameworks trying to explain same underlying truth. Reality is possibilities. The interpretation matters less than the recognition that possibilities are fundamental. Sign 7. Math isn't necessary for understanding. You recognize that quantum mathematics describes possibility behavior. You don't need to work equations to understand what they're describing. The math is precise quantification of something you comprehend conceptually. Understanding precedes mathematics. Sign 8. You see quantum in daily life. You're noticing quantum principles operating in everyday experience. Decision-making is collapsing possibilities. Attention is observation creating definite experience from potential. Relationships are entangled possibility fields. Quantum isn't just lab phenomenon, it's how reality works everywhere. Sign 9. Confusion about quantum replaced by curiosity. You're not confused anymore, but you're more curious. Not, I don't understand curiosity, but I wonder how this applies. Curiosity, exploration replacing confusion, questions becoming interesting instead of frustrating. Sign 10. You trust quantum reality more than classical reality. Used to trust everyday perception as real and think quantum was weird exception. Now you recognize quantum is fundamental reality and everyday experience is emergent appearance. You trust possibility framework more than thing framework. Sign 11. Other people's confusion makes sense. You understand why quantum physics confuses people. They're using wrong framework. You're not frustrated by their confusion because you remember having same confusion. You can see exactly where framework shift needs to happen for them. Sign 12. This video found you at perfect moment. The fact that you're here experiencing quantum clarity emerging isn't coincidence. Your consciousness was ready for this shift. The possibility field organized circumstances to deliver this transmission when you could receive it. That's quantum physics in action, reality as possibilities organizing around readiness. Here's the urgency. Quantum understanding isn't just intellectual achievement. It's perceptual revolution that changes how you experience reality and what becomes possible in your life. The longer you stay in confusion, the longer you experience reality as fixed limitation. The moment clarity arrives, you begin experiencing reality as fluid possibility. You're crossing that threshold now. Don't contract back into confusion. Let clarity stabilize. If you're experiencing 8 or more of these signs, quantum physics has genuinely stopped being confusing for you. You don't need more study. You need to deepen and apply the understanding you already have. And that's what makes everything shift. Moving from learning quantum physics to living quantum understanding. Now let's talk about how to maintain quantum clarity and never fall back into confusion. There are 3 core principles that, when you anchor them deeply, keep quantum understanding clear permanently. Principle 1. Always start with reality as possibilities. Whenever you encounter quantum phenomenon you don't immediately understand, come back to foundation. Reality is possibilities. Then ask, how would possibilities behave in this situation? Almost always the behavior becomes obvious. Confusion happens when you forget this foundation and try to understand quantum behavior as thing behavior. Return to possibility framework and clarity returns. Principle 2. Observation isn't recording, it's creating definiteness. This is the shift that makes observer effect clear. Stop thinking of observation as passive recording of pre-existing reality. Recognize observation as active collapsing of possibilities into specific manifestation. There is no reality independent of observation. There's only possibility field that becomes definite through observation. When you anchor this, every quantum experiment makes perfect sense. Principle 3. Separation is illusion at quantum level. Things that appear separate at everyday level are interconnected possibilities at quantum level. You aren't separate from reality you're observing. Particles aren't separate from field they emerge from. Consciousness isn't separate from physical reality, it's experiencing. All appearances of separation are emergent phenomena arising from unified possibility field. When you recognize fundamental unity, entanglement becomes obvious and every quantum correlation makes sense. These 3 principles work together. Possibilities, Principle 1, become definite through observation. Principle 2, within unified field. Principle 3. That's quantum physics in 3 sentences. And as long as you hold these principles as your foundation, quantum behavior never becomes confusing again. Here's the practice for maintaining clarity. When you encounter any quantum phenomenon, in study or in life, run it through these 3 principles. This is possibilities becoming definite through observation within unified field. Then ask, what would that look like? The answer is usually what quantum physics describes. If something still seems confusing, you're probably trying to understand it as things instead of possibilities. Return to Principle 1, and clarity returns. But there's deeper purpose to maintaining quantum clarity. This isn't just about understanding physics. It's about living from accurate perception of reality. When you deeply know reality as possibilities, your entire life transforms. You stop experiencing yourself as limited thing in fixed world. You recognize yourself as consciousness navigating infinite potential. That recognition changes everything about how you live, create, and experience existence. Quantum clarity isn't endpoint. It's beginning of living consciously in quantum reality instead of unconsciously in classical illusion. The physics understanding is just entry point. What matters is what you do with that understanding. Write in the comments one quantum phenomenon that's now clear to you that used to be confusing. Not to show off, to anchor your clarity by articulating it. What you can explain clearly, you understand deeply. Let's talk about what actually changes in your life when quantum understanding shifts from confusion to clarity. Not just intellectual satisfaction, practical transformation that affects how you live. Transformation 1. Manifestation becomes natural instead of forced. When you recognize your consciousness interacting with possibility field, manifestation makes sense. You're not trying to create something from nothing. You're collapsing specific possibilities into manifestation through conscious observation and aligned action. This removes the strain of trying to force reality and replaces it with flow of navigating possibilities. Transformation 2. Decisions become easier. You recognize every choice is selecting which possibilities to collapse into experience. No right or wrong choices, just different possibilities leading to different experiences. This removes paralysis of trying to make correct choice and replaces it with clarity about which possibility you prefer to experience. Transformation 3. Circumstances feel more fluid. Situations that seemed fixed and unchangeable reveal themselves as temporarily manifested possibilities that can reorganize. You're not trapped by circumstances. You're experiencing one set of collapsed possibilities, and different possibilities can collapse through shift in consciousness and observation. This creates hope and power where there was resignation. Transformation 4. Synchronicity becomes guidance system. You recognize synchronicities as possibility field organizing around your consciousness. Meaningful coincidences aren't random, they're reality showing you which possibilities are aligning. You learn to read and follow synchronicity as practical navigation tool. Transformation 5. Anxiety about future decreases. Future isn't predetermined path you're traveling toward. Future is possibilities that haven't collapsed yet. Since possibilities can organize infinite ways, there's nothing fixed to be anxious about. You're not trying to control predetermined future. You're influencing which possibilities manifest through present consciousness. Transformation 6. Past releases its grip. Past isn't solid fact determining present. Past is collapsed possibilities that existed in previous moments. Present isn't determined by past. Present is new set of possibilities collapsing now. This creates freedom from past patterns and ability to choose different possibilities in each moment. Transformation 7. Identity becomes fluid, not fixed. You recognize who you are is possibility that manifests through current observation and context. You're not fixed identity. Your possibility field experiencing itself through temporary identity pattern. This creates freedom to express different aspects of yourself and release identity limitations. Transformation 8. Relationship with uncertainty transforms. Uncertainty stops being problem and becomes recognition of possibility. When outcome isn't determined, infinite possibilities exist. Uncertainty becomes exciting rather than threatening. You're not in unknown chaos. You're in field of infinite potential where anything can manifest. Transformation 9. Sense of power without control. Classical framework says power comes from controlling circumstances. Quantum understanding reveals power comes from influencing possibilities through consciousness while releasing need to control exactly how they manifest. You're a powerful participant in creation without needing to be controlling manipulator. Transformation 10. Life becomes more playful. When reality is possibilities, life becomes game of exploration rather than serious struggle. You're playing with possibility field to see what manifests. Mistakes become experiments. Challenges become interesting puzzles. Seriousness dissolves into curious play. These aren't theoretical benefits. These are actual transformations that happen when quantum understanding moves from intellectual concept to lived perception. The moment you truly see reality as possibilities, your entire experience of living transforms. Not gradually, immediately. Because you're not in different reality, you're perceiving reality accurately for first time. We've arrived at the deepest recognition. The insight that makes quantum physics not just clear, but life-transforming. Are you ready? The ultimate truth isn't just that reality is possibilities. The ultimate truth is you are possibilities, not consciousness observing possibilities, not separate entity navigating possibilities. You, what you actually are, is possibility field recognizing itself through temporary appearance of individual perspective. Let me explain why this matters more than anything else you've learned. When you think quantum physics is about external reality, particles, waves, observers, you've missed the deepest implication. Quantum physics reveals that there's no distinction between observer and observed at fundamental level. Consciousness isn't separate from possibility field. Consciousness is possibility field becoming aware of itself. You're not person with consciousness observing quantum reality. You're quantum reality experiencing itself through temporary form called person. The entire framework of you as separate observer watching external reality is the illusion that quantum physics dissolves. At quantum level, there's just unified possibility field, and what you call you is one of infinite ways that field manifests itself. This is why observer effect exists, not because consciousness affects separate reality, because consciousness and reality are same thing at different levels of manifestation. When you observe electron, unified field is observing itself. The observation collapses possibilities because field is determining which possibility to experience through the lens of observation. No separation, just field exploring itself. This is why entanglement works. Two particles aren't separate things that mysteriously correlate. They're unified field appearing as two particles. The unity is fundamental. The separation is appearance. When you observe one, you're observing unified field through particular lens, and field responds as unified whole because it is unified whole. This is why superposition exists. Possibility field is infinite potential. From field's perspective, all possibilities exist simultaneously. From individual perspective emerging from field, possibilities collapse into specific experience. Both are true simultaneously. You are both infinite possibility field and specific collapsed manifestation, not metaphor, quantum reality. The master key is, stop thinking of yourself as person learning about quantum physics. Recognize yourself as quantum physics, as possibility field experiencing itself through temporary form that's having experience of learning about its own nature. Not studying external science. Recognizing your own fundamental nature. When this recognition lands, not as concept but as direct knowing, everything transforms. You're not limited person in quantum universe. You're quantum universe experiencing itself as temporary person. You're not trying to understand quantum reality. You're quantum reality recognizing itself. The study becomes self-recognition. The learning becomes remembering. The understanding becomes identity. This is why quantum physics matters beyond academic interest. Understanding quantum reality isn't just knowing facts about physics. It's recognizing what you actually are beneath the appearance of being separate individual. You're not in universe. You're universe appearing as you. You're not consciousness in body. You're consciousness experiencing itself as body. You're not observing possibilities. You're possibilities recognizing yourself. Once this lands, quantum physics doesn't just stop being confusing. It becomes most intimate, personal, transformative recognition possible. You're not learning about external reality anymore. You're recognizing your own nature, and that recognition changes absolutely everything about how you experience existence. The confusion about quantum physics was never about understanding difficult concepts. It was about the magnitude of what quantum physics reveals. The separate self you think you are is appearance in unified field that's actually what you are. You are possibilities. You are the field. You are quantum reality recognizing itself. And once you know this directly, not just understand it conceptually, life becomes completely different game. Not more advanced game, simpler game. Game of possibility field exploring itself through infinite forms, one of which is currently experiencing itself as you reading these words. That's quantum physics. That's you. Same thing. What you need to understand now is that your quantum clarity isn't just personal achievement. It affects collective consciousness. And your understanding matters more than you realize. Here's why. Humanity has been operating from classical framework for centuries. Solid things, fixed reality, separate individuals. That framework created certain civilization built on separation, competition, control, manipulation of objective environment, but that framework is fundamentally wrong. Reality doesn't work that way at quantum level. Your shift to quantum understanding, recognizing reality as possibilities, observation as creative, unity as fundamental, that shift doesn't just affect you. It contributes to collective consciousness, transitioning from classical to quantum framework. You're pioneer, early adopter, first wave. Each individual who achieves quantum clarity creates morphic field pattern that makes quantum understanding easier for others. First person to understand had to work hardest because no pattern existed. Each subsequent person finds it slightly easier because pattern is strengthening. Your clarity contributes to making quantum understanding accessible to millions who come after you. But there's more. The way you live from quantum understanding teaches others without words. When you navigate life as possibility field instead of fixed limitation, people around you notice something different. They can't articulate what's different, but they sense it. And that sensing creates openness to quantum perspective they didn't have before. You're not responsible for teaching quantum physics to everyone. You're responsible for living quantum understanding yourself. And that living creates field effect that influences collective consciousness automatically. Your clarity raises collective baseline. Your quantum functioning demonstrates new possibilities for human experience. Your understanding contributes to collective evolution. Think about implications. If enough individuals understand reality as possibilities, collective behavior transforms. Competition decreases because unity is recognized. Control decreases because flow is understood. Fear decreases because future is possibilities, not predetermined doom. The shift from classical to quantum framework at collective level would transform civilization more profoundly than any technology or political system could. You're part of that shift. Not through trying to convince others, but through genuinely understanding and living quantum reality yourself. The collective transformation happens through individual recognition accumulating until critical mass tips entire system. Your clarity matters because you're contributing to approaching that critical mass. This is service at quantum level. Understanding reality accurately isn't just personal benefit. It's contribution to collective evolution from less accurate to more accurate understanding of what existence actually is. And as collective understanding becomes more accurate, collective experience becomes more aligned, more flowing, more consciously creative. Write in the comments, "My clarity serves collective, not as burden but as recognition." Your quantum understanding isn't isolated achievement. It's part of humanity's greatest transition, from classical worldview to quantum reality recognition. We're completing this transmission, though really, your quantum understanding is just beginning. Because now that confusion has dissolved into clarity, you can actually use quantum understanding instead of struggling with it. There's one practice that keeps quantum physics clear forever. Here's what you do. Daily quantum recognition practice. Takes 2 minutes. Maintains clarity permanently. Step 1. Remember foundation. 30 seconds. Say internally, reality is possibilities. Observation creates definiteness. Everything is unified field. These 3 principles are foundation. Remembering them daily keeps confusion from returning. Step 2. Notice possibility. In present moment. 30 seconds. Look at immediate situation. Recognize. This circumstance is collapsed possibility, but other possibilities still exist. What's manifested isn't fixed. It's current manifestation of possibility field. Feel the fluidity beneath apparent solidity. Step 3. Observe yourself as possibilities. 30 seconds. Notice, I am not fixed identity. I'm possibility field experiencing itself through current manifestation. Who I am is fluid, changeable, multiple possibilities. Feel yourself as possibilities rather than solid thing. Step 4. Sense unity. 30 seconds. Recognize everything appears separate but is unified possibility field. No actual separation between observer and observed, consciousness and reality, you and everything. Feel the connection beneath appearance of separation. That's it. 2 minutes daily. This practice prevents classical framework from reasserting itself and keeps quantum understanding clear. You're not learning new concepts. You're reminding yourself daily of reality's actual nature. That reminder keeps perception accurate instead of reverting to habitual illusion of solidity and separation. Track your experience. Notice, does quantum behavior continue making sense? Do you catch yourself perceiving reality as possibilities throughout day? Does confusion stay resolved? If yes, practice is working. Now critical action. Write 1 word in the comments. Word that captures your quantum clarity. Not thinking, just noticing what word emerges. That word is your clarity signature. Anchors your understanding so it stays stable. Subscribe to this channel as continued support for living quantum understanding. Clarity is beginning, not end. Now you need guidance for applying quantum understanding to actual life. Every video here serves that purpose. And final piece, video appearing on your screen is next quantum transmission. You understand quantum physics now. That understanding prepares you for deeper recognitions about consciousness, reality, and what becomes possible when you live from quantum awareness. The next transmission builds on clarity you just achieved. You're not the same consciousness that started this video. You've shifted from confusion to clarity, from struggling to understand to actually understanding, from complex confusion to simple truth. And that shift is permanent if you maintain it through daily practice. Quantum physics isn't confusing anymore, not because it became easier, because you shifted framework from thing reality to possibility reality, and that shift makes everything quantum clear. Welcome to quantum clarity. Welcome to understanding reality as it actually is. Welcome to seeing through classical illusion into quantum truth. The confusion is over. The clarity begins. And once you see reality as possibilities, you can never unsee it. Live from this understanding. Apply this clarity. Let quantum physics stop being abstract theory and become practical wisdom for navigating existence. Reality is possibilities. Observation creates definiteness. Everything is unified field. That's quantum physics. That's reality. That's you. Clear, simple, true. The next transmission awaits. Your quantum clarity needs it. Click it. Continue deepening. Once you see this, quantum physics stops being confusing forever.